Hello there, my name is Daphne, and today I want to teach or basically share what I've learned from the book of John chapter 11. It's such an interesting story. It's about Lazarus, Lazarus who was dead and who was raised from the dead. I mean, when I was studying this story, I was just like, wow, this is amazing, because I didn't really see it that way in the past. So I mean, yeah, I just wanted to share this. So exciting. So this will be like a pod series. Basically, I'll just share a little bit, and then next week I'll share some more, because there's just so much to the book of to the book of John chapter 11 on the story of Lazarus. Yeah, so before we begin, I just pray that the Lord may open your hearts to receive the word that He has for you today through my sharing, and that your ears may be attentive to His voice as He speaks to you, as He teaches you things, maybe something in your own life that you may be experiencing. I just pray that He will edify you and deliver you from any troubles that you are facing today. Yeah, so we thank God, and so let's go to John chapter 11. John chapter 11 from verse 1. So I'm just going to read John chapter 11 verse 1. The words will be on the screen. So, now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary, and her sister Martha. See, when you read this verse, you really don't think there's much to it, but there's so much to it. Okay, so a certain man was sick. So we are told that a certain man was sick. Okay, his name was Lazarus. And we are told where he was located. The sick man named Lazarus was located in a town called Bethany. And this is the town where this man who was sick, whose name is Lazarus, had a sister called Mary and another sister called Martha. So first of all, let's find out who is Lazarus, what is he all about, basically. So Lazarus, the name Lazarus in Greek actually means whom God helps. So this man whom God helps was sick, okay? And we are told where this man whom God helps was located. So we are told that he was located in Bethany. And the name Bethany in Greek actually means house of misery. Yeah, it means house of misery. So this man whom God helps was located in the house of misery. Now, isn't that ironic? So you may find yourself that, you are a Christian, but you seem to be surrounded by misery. You seem to be surrounded by negative people. You seem to be surrounded by negative situations, and you don't understand why. Why are you surrounded by negative situations, yet you are a person whom God helps? So now let's look at what was happening in Bethany, what was happening in this place of misery. Why is Bethany called the house of misery? What is going on in Bethany? So let's do a little background research, a little history digging. So, okay, before we do that, let's find out about Lazarus' sisters. So actually the name Mary actually means their rebellion. And the name Martha in Greek means she was rebellious. So here we are, we have a man whom God helps, who has a sister called their rebellion, and another sister called she was rebellious. They all live in the town of Bethany, which means house of misery. That really kind of gives us a little bit of information why it's not so intriguing that Lazarus is sick. Okay, so let's do a little research on Bethany. So basically, Bethany, there's quite a lot happening in Bethany, in this house of misery. If we really look deep into it, we can see a bit of what was actually going on in Bethany. First of all, there were spiritual problems in Bethany. There were spiritual miseries in Bethany. There were also emotional miseries in Bethany, and there were physical miseries in Bethany. So let's start with the spiritual misery. Let's look at the spiritual misery that was going on in Bethany. So we can see that in John chapter 11, verse 8, which says, "The disciples say to him, 'Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and you are going there again?'" So actually this is after the Lord had decided to actually go to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead. So we'll do that teaching another time. But here we just want to focus on the spiritual misery that was going on in Bethany. So the spiritual misery that was in Bethany was actually rebellion. There was rebellion in Bethany because here we have these Jews who want to stone the King of Kings, who is actually the resurrection and the life. Here we have Jews who actually want to stone the resurrection and the life. The Jews do not want resurrection in Bethany. They do not want life in Bethany. They are comfortable living in rebellion. They're comfortable living in an area of death. They're comfortable living in an area where there is no life, where there's lifelessness. So we have spiritual rebellion in Bethany. So that's point number one. Point number two, we have spiritual misery, which we will see in Luke chapter 7, verse 39. Let's just go there. Luke chapter 7, verse 39, which says, yeah. Okay, I'm going to read this in a different version. I'll actually read it in the New International Version, which says, no. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I'm going to read this in the New King James Version. So that's Luke chapter 7, verse 39. "Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him..." Okay, no, I have to actually... Right. Yes, let's start from verse 37 to 39. So I'm going to read from verse 37 to 39, which says, "And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and she began to wash his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with fragrant oil." Now pay attention to this part. "Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, 'This man, if he was a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner.'" For she is a sinner. So here we are. We have in Bethany a woman who is also Lazarus' sister. I mean, if you look up in the other chapters, you actually discover that this is the same Mary who is the sister of Lazarus, which I will prove in John chapter 11 again. John chapter 11 verse 2, which says, "And that was it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick." So read here, we can tell that this Mary was a sinner in terms of sexual sin, sexual immorality. So sexual immorality is actually an indication that there is emotional instability. There is insecurity, there is brokenness, there is no wholeness emotionally, there is incompleteness in her emotions. So in Bethany, we can see that there is emotional unstableness. So not only are we looking at Mary, who is the sinner, but we are also looking at the people who were probably sleeping with her. The men who were sleeping with her, they were probably also not emotionally stable. They probably had their own wives. We don't know what was happening in there, but we can just see from that there's emotional instability. Okay, so we have seen spiritually the problems in Bethany, that there's rebellion. Secondly, we have seen that there was emotional instability in Bethany. There was probably a lot of fornication and adultery, things like that in there. And then physically, now this one is it's so exciting. Not exciting like, exciting about it, but it's exciting to realize that this was actually going on in Bethany. So physically, this is my favorite part. It's just Mark chapter 11 verse 13. Let's see what was happening in Bethany physically. So Mark chapter 11 verse 13 says, "Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit." So the Lord Jesus here, let me just read the previous verse, sorry. I'm just going to read the previous verse for you, that we may have the whole picture of what is going on here. Okay, just bear with me a second while I load it on my computer. Okay, so, right. Okay, right. So the next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Okay, so they were leaving Bethany. They were coming from Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is about 1.8 kilometers, or 1.8 miles, I think. It's about 1.8 miles from Bethany, which is about 30 minutes walk. It's a 30-minute walk from Jerusalem to Bethany. So here we see the Lord and his disciples are leaving they're leaving Bethany, and Jesus was hungry. So it says in Mark chapter 11 verse 12, the next day as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Okay, then the next verse says, "Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. But when he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs." You know what? This is just, it's so intriguing that in this place, in Bethany, it was so infested with misery, such that this misery affected even the trees. It affected even the fruit trees, such that they became unfruitful. I mean, this is just, it's crazy. Like even the trees, they were unfruitful. Because this tree was actually located a distance. Basically, when you come out of Bethany, just when the Lord just was coming out of Bethany, he saw from a distance. So this unfruitfulness is actually, it's so manifested in Bethany, such that it affects the outskirts of Bethany, and it affects, it's so sad, So physically in Bethany, there was unfruitfulness in Bethany, basically. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna make this video short because I don't have much time on YouTube. But basically, so what we have learned today from this one verse, let's just recap. John chapter 11, verse 1. So basically we have a man whose name is Lazarus, which means one whom God helps, who lives in Bethany, the house of misery, whose sister is called Mary, which means their rebellion, and another sister called Martha, which means she was rebellious. They lived in Bethany, which is about 1.8 miles from Jerusalem, which is about 30 minutes walk in between. And in Bethany, in this house of misery, there's spiritual rebellion, there's emotional unstableness, and there's physical unfruitfulness. So from that, we can actually learn a lot about the condition of Lazarus. We can learn a lot about how sickness could easily come and dwell in this place. We can learn a lot about how Satan was, rampant in Bethany. He could do what he wanted because there's rebellion, there's unstableness, there's unfruitfulness. There's just so much corruption, there's so much emotional corruption, there's so much spiritual corruption, in Bethany. So from that, we can actually begin to understand the sickness of Lazarus. We can begin to understand the plan of the Lord. We can begin to understand and comprehend his power, that he's not limited by anything. We can understand that the resurrection and the life can come in a place where everything is dead, you can come in a place where there is no hope and raise things that were already dead and actually make things fruitful and make things stable and actually cancel rebellion. So from there we can understand, I mean, we can begin to expect and to see a picture of Lazarus and what was really going on in there. So I just pray that you enjoyed this little teaching of mine, and God bless you. Thank you. And don't forget to visit my website, www.incorruptiblebeauty.com. Thank you. Bye.